Hello dear viewers, I am Alka and I welcome you all to my channel Study with Alka. Today, in this video, I am going to talk about the nationalistic period of the growth of folklore studies in India. Dear students, I have already talked about folklore and folklore studies, particularly about India and how the scholars and folklorists of India realize the value of a systematic folkloric structure, and how Dr. Jawaharlal Nehru, one of the greatest folklorists of India, categorized the growth of folklore studies in India into three periods: the missionary period, the nationalistic period, and the academic period. I have already uploaded a video on the missionary period. Today, in this video, I am specifically going to talk about the nationalistic period. The nationalistic period of the growth of folklore studies in India ranges from 1900 to 1950. This period is marked by the feeling of nationalism, unity, togetherness, and Indianness, which got induced in the scholars, literary figures, and folklorists of India as a result of their readings of the works that was written in the missionary period. The missionary period actually came just before this period, and after reading their writings, after reading their collections and texts, Indian scholars and Indian literary figures actually realized the value that why India also need its very own collection of folkloric material, which should be written from their own point of view, not from any foreign point of view. And that is why this period is basically named as the nationalistic period. So, the nationalistic period ranges from 1900 to 1950, and the works of the missionaries and the civil servants made Indian intellectuals aware of their own cultural heritage and fanned the decades-old spark of freedom among them. Dear students, as you all know that our country India has been under the rule of British Empire for hundreds of years, and our freedom fighters actually worked and struggled really hard for this freedom. But this feeling of freedom was something which was present in the atmosphere of Indian people only in bits and pieces, and there was no feeling of togetherness and collective approach towards freedom. But the works of the missionaries, after reading the works of the missionaries and civil servants, Indian intellectuals actually realized that how these missionaries and these British people are actually portraying Indian folkloric material and Indian epics and legends according to their own perception, and hiding the real rawness and truth, the real richness and color lying behind these tales and legends and stories. And after their readings, they felt an urge to write about their own country, to know much more about their own country, to get involved into collection of folkloric materials, or be it any cultural material, any dance form, any language, or anything which is related to India. And that is why the works of nationalistic period is basically a result of the missionaries' work. Native scholars, that is the scholars of our very own country India, inspired by the nationalistic period, for the very first time valued their own oral traditions and began collecting and studying them. Folklore no longer remained the exclusive domain of the long robed Christian missionary or the white collared foreign bureaucrat. So, I have already told you that although missionaries and civil servants collected and took interest in Indian culture, Indian tales, Indian manners, and habits of Indian people, specifically the rural people of India, but it was not something they were doing because they were fascinated by their lifestyle, but it was something which they were doing because they wanted their own faith of Christianity to be spread among Indian people, and also civil servants wanted to run their administration very smoothly, and that is why they collected just the raw habits, manners, and folk forms and dance forms in their text, but only from their own point of view. But after nationalistic period, and after the text that were published in nationalistic period, the folk literature of India no longer remained an exclusive domain. It was not something which was meant for only Christian missionaries. So, folklore no longer remained the exclusive domain of the long robed Christian missionaries or the white collared foreign bureaucrat. Now, folklore began to be studied from the Indian point of view. Now, when Indian literary figures, Indian scholars and intellectuals started writing, actually collecting Indian folkloric materials and taking full interest in our culture and dance forms and language and legends, tales, ballads, etc., folklore began to be studied from our own point of view, that is, from Indian point of view. Also, there was a departure from Sanskrit orientedness, or actually what happened is that epics and ballads that were actually already spread in Indian atmosphere or in the atmosphere of Indian people were mostly written in Sanskrit language, and Sanskrit language was something that was not accessible to all the people of India or not understood by all the people of India. But after nationalistic period, there was a shift from Sanskritic text orientedness, and folkloric materials began to be written in various other regional languages of India, such as Kannada, Tamil, Hindi, Bangla, and so on. As a result of this, there was a shift in politics also of India. The Indian freedom leaders, the leaders of India who actually fought for freedom struggle of India, realized that these folkloric materials also had some political value, and it was something, these literature and oral tradition was something that can be used to illuminate and execute and induce the feeling of togetherness among Indian folk. Folkloric resources began to be associated with national unity and identity, which was all apparent throughout the Indian freedom movement. So, this feeling of togetherness, Indianness, and nationalism, this patriotic feeling, was the much needed feeling that need to be there in Indian people if they wanted to get freed from British Empire. And so, folkloric resources actually played a very important role in inducing those feelings. Folklore served as a vehicle for the transmission of ideas and news. and was in fact the only powerful media of the masses. Now, it was the time period when mass media uh, uh, was not that active, and actually television media was also not there, and also it was not possible for every rural people of India to buy newspaper for the day-to-day news, for the day-to-day developments that was going on in the freedom struggle of India. So the folk literature of our country served as a vehicle, as a source for the transmission our of the ideas of freedom struggle, and also the news, and was in fact that time the only powerful media of masses. So folklore served as a great help and became a powerful media of the masses. Now, some important works of this period are Lakshminath Bezabura's Buri Ait Shashu. Lakshminath Bezabura's Buri Ait Shashu, which was published in 1911. Second is Dinesh Chandra Sen's Sati, that was published in 1917. Dear students, please note that this Sati is a very important text, is a very important work that was published by Dinesh Chandra Sen, and it holds a very huge place in our literary history. Another work by Dinesh Chandra Sen was The Folk Literature of Bengal, and it was published in 1920. Zevarchand Meghani's Halardan, published in 1928. Ram Naresh Tripaঠি's Hamara Gram Sahitya, published in 1940. Narottam Swami's Dhola Maru Ra Doha, published in 1947. Students, please make notes of these important points that I am discussing in this video, because these points are something which must be written in your answers if you want to score good marks. And the growth of folklore studies in India is a very important question for the students of MEG 16 Ignou. MEG 16 is actually a very newly introduced paper for the students of Masters in English, and I know that there are a lot of students who have a lot of confusion regarding this paper, but don't worry, I'm here to help you. And if you want to get good marks in this paper, please do subscribe my channel, and I promise you that I'll help you through this journey. Now let's get on to the video. Many Indian creative writers brought literary productions in the forms of novel, drama, poetry, and short stories that were either based on or highlighting the local folklore themes. So, all these works which I mentioned are very important works that was written in folklore, in nationalistic period of the folklore growth. But there was also some works that was written in the form of novel, drama, poetry, and short stories. And the major theme that was discussed in these works were the folkloric themes. Besides the Indian scholars and authors, few Western scholars also contributed heavily in the collection and study of Indian folklore during this time. So, nationalistic period is something which is easily related to Indian people, Indian scholars, Indian folklorists. But besides these Indian folkloric work by Indian people, by Indian scholars, there was some authors, some British authors also, who contributed heavily in the collection and study of Indian folklore during this period. Some of the worth mentioning works are the text of Where'er Elwin's book Songs of the Forest, where Elwin wrote a book titled Songs of the Forest, in which he wrote many texts, and those texts are of utmost importance from folklore point of view, especially Indian folkloric point of view. The first is the folk poetry of the Gonds, which was published in 1935. Next is Folk Tales of Mahakoshal, published in 1944. Next is Folk Songs of Chhattisgarh, published in 1946. Then Myths of Middle India, published in 1949. Then Tribal Myths of Odisha, published in 1954. Myths of the Tribal Frontiers Agency, 1958. Dear students, folklore, now from whole of this video, one line that can be the conclusion of this video is that folklore played the crucial role of medium of spreading Indianness, of spreading Indian nationalism and unity among Indian people, both pre-independence and post-independence India. So hope you are clear with your confusion regarding the nationalistic period of the folklore growth of India, and hope this video actually helped you in your studies. Thank you very much. Please do like, share and subscribe my channel.